Hello, and welcome to another Behind the Poem story. Now, this is another catch up, obviously. I posted the quote from this particular poem on a Monday, and I didn't manage to get to recording the Behind the Poem story, so I apologize. But I am catching up. I am getting to all of the Behind the Poem stories from my coffee and paper cuts. And this one is about, oh, come on, I was just. Now, of all the poems in Coffee and Paper Cuts, this is one of the ones that whenever I read it out at an open mic or whenever I discuss it with someone who has read it, is I completely see myself in it. And it expresses that kind of common affliction of walking into a room and forgetting what you went into the room, of getting distracted on your journey from the living room to the kitchen or from the bedroom to the bathroom, and then not remembering what you were actually trying to do. This happens not just inside the home, but outside the home. And I don't know about you, but I go into the grocery store and I have one goal. I have one thing that I absolutely cannot leave that grocery store without. And yet, somehow, despite walking out with 20 pounds worth of things, I still manage to forget that one thing. And that one thing is usually so important, I have to go back in and do it again. So, this idea of, come on, I was just, is that human affliction, that human emotion of going through life not 100% sure that we know what we're doing from moment to moment, that we forget or we get distracted, or we can't keep our thought process in any kind of linear fashion, that tangentially we go off into flights of fancy, or when we are trying to shape an idea or we're trying to get through an emotion or an event and we allow our mind to wander in order to get through a boring meeting or to get through the day without thinking about that negative thing from yesterday or that negative thing that's coming tomorrow. All of the way that our minds work when we get distracted by shiny things over here or butterflies over there, it's we talk about it often with children getting so easily distracted, but we don't change. It happens to all of us as we get older. And it's not just as we get old with the whole senior moment concept. We blame it on that, but actually, all our lives are just one series of distractions. Very rarely can I concentrate on something for longer than 2 or 3 hours. Now, I know that concentrating on a single thing for 2 or 3 hours is pretty good, but equally, it is a reason why I can't do a whole lot of work at home. It is the reason why when I want to have a writing night, a night dedicated to my poetry, to my writing and my craft, I have to go somewhere else. I have to go somewhere other than my home in order to not be distracted by the laundry or the dishes or the schoolwork that is piling up or the piles of paper that are piling up as a result of my schoolwork. It is where I make lists of things to do and yet don't get through any of them because I notice something else that's not on the list, but is definitely important for me to do. Or the phone rings, or there's a knock on the door, or packages, or the grocery delivery, or the TV show, or the advert in between the TV show leads you to another TV show. All of these constant distractions from the stimulus around us are all fodder for writing, but they're also something that resonates with almost everybody I know. This concept of forgetting what you were doing, being determined to hold on to it, and still managing to forget it. So that whole idea of, come on, I was just trying to get done the laundry. I was just on my way to get that thing, which I forgot. And then I remembered, but I didn't remember in time for me to, it's a whole thing. So the story behind Come On, I Was Just was an attempt to capture that mental space that we're in when we get distracted. And in technical terms, a lot of times when I use forms or when I use a particular structure to my poem, it's on purpose, although not always. But I can 100% say that all of the line breaks and the enjambment and the single lines separate from the other verses, those were all on purpose to try and affect or recreate that sense of loss or that sense of distraction within the poem that I experience in real life when I have this happen to me or when it happens to any of us. So as you read it, there is less punctuation than there might be, if I was writing it down in full sentences and not in poetic form. It purposely doesn't rhyme. It purposely has random line length and random verse length and all the kind of different things that happen. And by the end of the poem, where I just kind of give up keeping it linear, give up the concept of trying to stay on track, when I was like, oh, what was I saying again? You know what? Never mind. I'm just going to go. I got distracted on the way to do this thing, and now I tried to do this thing, and you know what? I'm giving up. And we all get that point. And so the poem is the language in the poem, the structure of the poem, the structure of the lines and the verses, and all of the positioning on the page is actually all intentional. So just like I intend to tell the stories in the order in which they came, just like I intend to post them every Saturday, I don't always succeed. And so this poem is particularly reflective of the catch up on behind the poem stories that I'm doing now. It's also very reflective of the last one I gave you, the last catch up poem I gave you, Better Than, where my technology cut it off right at the end. So I didn't actually get to say, thank you for listening. I didn't actually get to say, thank you for putting up with my rambling, because in last week's one, the technology failed me and I liked what I had said in the video so much, I didn't want to re-record it. So this concept of better than, and this concept of, come on, I was just in the middle of telling that beautiful behind the poem story, and the technology failed, or the phone rang, or the package came. And so last week's is a prime example of when life does not allow you to stay on track. So I hope you have enjoyed this rambling behind the poem story, which is a catch up from all the weeks before, where I'm trying to make sure that I give you that little bit extra that I always try to do on my YouTube videos, which is tell you the stories behind my poems, the stories behind my madness and my imagination. And I hope that you've enjoyed it. If you have, please do make sure that you check out the behind the poem stories from my first book, Between Hindsight and Foresight, my second book, Chasing Apollo, and this book, all the ones I've done before, for Coffee and Paper Cuts. And as always, enjoy, create, invent, imagine, and don't forget to pick up that thing at the grocery store that you forgot last week that you can't live without. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.